We don't have time. It's already done. It's literally too late. People are talking about, like, science is talking about how we're going to hit we're going to start seeing 1.5 in 2024. And people want to keep talking about how time is running out. No, time ran out like 10, 20 years ago. We are on borrowed time. We don't even know. We're holding on to nothing right now. We built on very shaky foundation that is going to crack sooner rather than later.
This is a podcast called Walk, Talk, Listen. An attempt to connect people and make this world a bit better by sharing opinions and experiences based on the belief that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. My name is Maurice Bloem, and I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen. Good day, everybody. This is another episode of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. And as always, I'm delighted with today's guest. Chandelle, please introduce yourself.
Hi, good day. My name is Chandelle O'Neil, pronouns they, them. I am a sustainable energy specialist and a human rights advocate from Trinidad and Tobago. And I just so happened to meet Maurice last week at New York Climate Week, so we decided to do a little session on the podcast. I do a bunch of different things. When it comes to climate change, I generally focus on the intersection of gender and climate. Been working in the space more actively since the pandemic, since a lot of it went online. It became more accessible to people from my demographics, like aka SIDS, remote areas, so it's been more accessible. I'm also a member of YOUNGO, which is the youth constituency to the UNFCCC. That's the official constituency. If children or youth have any issues with climate change Paris Agreement, you go straight to this channel. I also volunteer locally doing I guess it's reforestation and other things, including I volunteer, like, the human rights advocacy side of me comes from, like, I'm openly queer, and in Trinidad and Tobago it is a perpetual work in progress. So I volunteer on those spaces, hopefully trying to move that needle of justice in the right directions, coming over a very conservative society. My formal education is in engineering, focused on, like, sustainable energy systems design, like solar PV, wind turbines, all that kind of stuff. So I also have an enterprise registered around that. But Trinidad and Tobago is also very much an oil and gas country, so it's another perpetual work in progress. But fortunately enough, I'm hopefully starting to work more in the region, in the Caribbean, and get to go to other islands, because other islands don't necessarily have the same subsidies and have to do more greater strides around being more renewable. So hopefully it can make a change in those spaces as well. And that's my introduction for now. Thanks.
I have to lie down, no. I mean, this is, this is incredible. Everything you do. So what do you do when you have some time off?
I like to go to the beach. I like to plant trees. I like to go to the river. I like to hang out with friends. I like to play video games online. The normal stuff. It's just we fit in everything. Everybody has 24 hours in the days. What you choose to do with those 24 hours?
Okay, well, amazing. So can you take us a little bit, through your journey in terms of how did you get where you are today? So how was your, upbringing, and why ultimately, are you so active within this space?
Okay. Well, for me, I born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago. I went to university and worked in Canada for 5 years. And part of that, like, me going away and seeing the other side of the world, kind of solidified for me that I wanted to go back home. If I'm going to do good anyway, I might as well do it back home. Unfortunately, also in 2014, a bushfire in the area got close enough to burn the land behind my house and got close enough to burn parts of my roof. So that's kind of how I started planting trees at Fonzalon's Forestation Project. It was straight up, like, kind of have skin in the game. So, because it's right over the hill from behind my house. So if there has no trees, it's very easy for more hazards to come closer to my house. So that's kind of how I started. From there, I was working full time and things happened with that. So I registered an enterprise and started doing my own thing. And it's also around the time when the pandemic hit, I started volunteering a lot more because we had more issues with, human rights advocacy. CAISO was organizing like a food drive and a clothes drive because the pandemic was pretty rough on, general communities, but vulnerable communities generally have a little tougher time. I was also volunteering at like vaccine drives and stuff because again, we were having issues with just people, rural communities accessing information, so just doing things the hard way. So yeah, just kind of, it's always been in my nature to just start at something and see where it takes me. So you asked me how I got here, it's probably just straight up planting trees in my backyard, and now apparently I have some sway where I get to go to New York Climate Week sometimes. Technically, I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
I did confirmation and all that kind of stuff. I'm openly queer, also well Black. So those two things may not necessarily go well together.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Growing up, it wasn't fun, but it was all right. Like I knew it would be a problem eventually, but it just became a point where I crossed that bridge and started coming out, and it was a perpetual work in progress, but it's getting better. I went to like a co-ed primary school, was always very much a tomboy, hanging out more with the boys and that kind of stuff. So it was kind of always apparent I was more masculine presenting. And then for secondary school, I went to all girls school, and that you think it would be more like just because you're around girls more, it would be a phase and all that kind of stuff. But no, still the same person, still the same who I was. It just became more apparent. I'll say, fortunately, one thing that kind of saved me a little bit was just generally being good at mathematics and science. Like school wasn't necessarily the best time, but it's just like part of the reason why I got through school and was able to get my degree and everything. It was just I was lucky. I was good with math and science. Like I wasn't necessarily doing the best in English, French, and all these other subjects that I had me doing, but those like some of it kind of did all right. So school wasn't too stressful. Like I got through it. I could have probably done better, but I got through it, and so I don't mind. By the time I went to university, I was more out. Like I came out basically between secondary school and university. I took a gap year and was specifically kind of just to start coming out and work on that. So that worked out well. By the time I went to university, it was open information. Kind of involved in like the queer clubs and all that kind of stuff. I have friends who know, respect my pronouns. It's not a problem. But yeah, it wasn't necessarily fun, but based on where I have come from, it was all right. Like it could have been better, but it wasn't the worst. So it was all right. And I made it through, and like 29 years now, and it's all right.
Yeah. And Chandelle, if you would have any advice for kids out there who are going through the same as you had to go, what would be the advice in terms of living in Trinidad? And I assume being Catholic is and living in a relatively small community is still true for younger folks out there. So what would you advise them?
Take it
knowing
one day
what you know now.
It is absolutely scary, and probably will always be the scariest thing you ever have to go through in your life. But once you're in it and going through it, it gets a lot better. And I don't say it gets a lot better in terms of like society and the world. I think your human ability to cope is what grows. So that's what gets better. Also, when it comes to like gender nonconformance and like queer and trans and non-binary things, the best piece of advice I ever got was take away the whole transition aspect of it. Take away the anxiety of like hormones, surgery, coming out in that aspect. Just take it all away. Just if you can, try to figure out how to be comfortable in your own skin. Not necessarily even your own body, just find a way to be comfortable in your own skin. And like part of that for me was straight up just getting tattoos and like exercising. Like part of it, like I know like I exercise in such a way that I change the shape of my body because I can. I know it could be more extreme if I took hormones and that kind of stuff, but and I also get tattoos as well as like a tool of adornment, but just learn to be comfortable in your own skin. And yeah, it's gonna suck for a while. It is honestly gonna suck for a while, but on the other side of the suck, you find something invincible, like something they can't touch. Like you basically went through the scariest thing, you went into the abyss, you went through hell, you saw it all, and you're on the other side with still a smile. So it'll make you tougher. It'll just definitely make you tougher. And that's part of it. It doesn't get better, you just get stronger. So I think that's the best piece of advice I'll give you. It may not necessarily get better, but you definitely will get stronger. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, and I really think it will be helpful for kids out there and for anybody else actually. Hey, can you? Is there any project or activity that you're working on at the moment that you would like to share with the audience?
Well, okay. Well, I belong to a lot of different organizations. I'm part of SOE Caribbean, and part of that project right now, we're talking a lot about deep sea mining because the big conference for it happened in Jamaica, and the big headquarters for it is kind of like in our own backyard. But the Caribbean itself may not necessarily understand why deep sea mining isn't a good thing. So SOE was very much working on a few campaigns around raising public awareness around deep sea mining and basically supporting the moratorium of just that we don't know enough science to just be messing with things down there, so we should just kind of leave it alone until at least we learn more. I'm also part with CAISO, Sex and Gender Justice, which is the local LGBTQI community engagement project. Right now we have a project called Wholeness and Justice, where we straight up work on getting vulnerable communities, queer communities enrolled in social services like food grants, health and psychosocial support if they need it. There's also the program called Sign Together, where we have people teaching first responders sign language because they found that one of the biggest problems in Trinidad and Tobago is communicating with deaf people, especially in queer communities. I'm also kind of have a project where I'm trying to get to COP27, have partial funds raised, have my accreditation badges. It's just need the whole sets of funds. So I'm applying for different things and working on that as well. But yeah, CAISO, SOE, those are kind of the major projects tackling right now, I guess. Thanks.
Great. And we will make sure people who are listening to it and would like to support you, maybe we will put that in the podcast notes so that it is easy. And I would definitely make a shout out to anyone out there who would like to support Chandelle to go to COP27. I think there is a lot that you can contribute. So awesome. This podcast is a spin-off of a 100-mile walk that I've been doing for the last 10 years now, and you're making the preparations for number 11. I try to walk because I would like to raise awareness about hunger, poverty, and injustice. And the question I always ask to my guest is, if you would be asked to walk 100 miles in a week, to 15 to 20 miles a day, for what reason would you walk? For what cause?
I'm honestly kind of mischievous. So you asked me to walk 100 miles in a week, 15 to something miles a day. I would do it just to be able to say I can, just because to be able to say I did. Like, that's enough reason for me to do that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. If you put a cause in front of it, I'll say you put human rights / like gender-based violence. I know that is like the number one pressing issue, at least in the Caribbean context. So, but either way, I would do it, just to see something to do. But if you want to put it behind something, gender-based violence, because due to the systems of oppression and exploitation we inherited from colonialism, we're still working on trying to figure out how to treat women and girls decent.
No, so I invite you to join me the next time I go. So to see if you can do it, right?
I'm not going to toot my own horn. I'm not going to overestimate my abilities, but I'm pretty sure I can do it. It's just 15 miles flat land. Like, I could, a 5K is like a half an hour. Like, I can do it if I need to do it. I just don't like to run. I just don't want to run.
I'm not talking about running. We're talking about walking.
Walking, okay.
Yeah. We're talking about walking. Absolutely. Hey, actually, when I walk with others during that 100-mile walk, some, join me for a mile, others for 10. And we talk about many things. But one of the recurring themes is always about, why are we on this earth? And then we start talking about religion and spirituality. And one of the questions that I always ask to my guests is, it seems that, well, some people are saying, the younger generation thinks differently about religion and spirituality. Others are saying, no, it's still the same. And others are saying, well, maybe they feel differently towards institutionalized religion, but they are still spiritual. So my question to you is, what do you see happening among youth in your community, with regard to religion and spirituality?
I would agree. Like, I think to a certain extent, we're moving away from religion. There's still a certain level of spirituality. I think my generation moves less away from prayer and more towards meditation. I think also there's like, I don't necessarily subscribe, but there's a lot of talk of like astrology, like star signs and that kind of stuff, and moon in retrograde. That kind of cups up a little more in terms of spirituality. I just think, like, I do believe also my generation isn't as conservative. So we're definitely moving away a lot from like the binary and a lot of the things we'd find in like the holy books of like the Bible and all that kind of stuff in terms of the definition of what is what. But there is still room for spirituality. There's still room for believing in a higher power. We're not like a completely malcontent generation where everything is just like, no, we don't believe in it because that's what the older generation did. We're just doing it a little differently, and it may be a little bit beyond the binary and like strict definitions that we've previously been given. But I at least see there's room for spirituality within my generation.
And why do you think, your generation, or at least in your community, there is the youth is going away from religion? Why is that?
I think it comes like, I can only speak for myself, but like my perception is a lot of religion was designed at a time when straight up humans did not have access to literacy. So like now we straight up just know more. We know more science. We know more everything about the universe. So it's just because we know more now. I think the whole starting tool of religion was just that, a starting tool. But now that we know more, we kind of have to move steps towards a more advanced way of believing in the world and how it's made up, because a lot of it is just, it was designed for the time and place. Like some of the restrictions that he put in the Bible was just because of like health reasons. Like I can't know specifically, but it was just like they didn't want you to eat that, so they put it in the Bible in a certain way that the meat was tainted, all that kind of stuff. It was just and that just had to do with the level of literacy and the understanding of how disease spread at the time. And now that we know more, we don't necessarily need such conservative and missing information as a major source of why we do things. And I think that's it. It's just, we know more now. So we know more science, we know more math, we know more everything at this point, and we have more tools to measure and see the world that we know. So we kind of, with what we know more about, we just going with the more. Like, no offense to religion or anything, but the starting point was just like a lesser view of the world. So now that we know more, we might as well see a bigger world.
I'm assuming that you grew up within the Catholic Church. So how did that journey go?
I am honestly Catholic because according to my mother, my grandmother would turn over in her grave if I wasn't. I did confirmation and everything, but also it should be noted my secondary school was Catholic, so that kind of spurred my longevity in Catholicism. But I wasn't necessarily too much of a big subscriber. It was very much something my parents, more specifically my mother, made me do. So I continued to do it for as long as she wanted me to. I confirmed and everything. And I remember it was funny. Like, she was making a joke with me. At least I thought it was a joke, that you have to get confirmed so you'll be able to get married in a church. And at the time, I already knew I was queer. So I knew I wasn't getting married in a church. So she would just be like, we will see. And then in my head, I'd be like, we will see. We will definitely not see, but we will see. So it was like, all right. They were just... like, also, like, part of it also, like, Christianity gave me a way of seeing the world. It still influences who I am as a person. Like, part of the reason why I volunteer so much is the Christian in me. It's just part of Christianity teaches you, when world is all these things are going on, one of the best things you could do is to serve other people who can't do anything for you. It kind of puts everything in perspective. And like, there's certain aspects of Christianity I'll take with me forever, but I don't necessarily need to subscribe for it. And I respect it as a way of like which my mother and my grandmother needed to see the world. But as I've gotten older, I think they respect that I wouldn't need to do that for my children at all. But I respect that they did it for me.
You mentioned that your generation is going from prayer to meditation. Well, can you explain to us, what is the difference?
For me, I think it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of like manifestation. Like prayer is basically you saying your words into something and you keep repeating it, hopefully for something to come into fruition from it. And meditation is the same way. But with prayer, it's kind of generally always guided towards God or Allah or whatever gods you believe in. But meditation is kind of putting it out into the universe. It's like more of like manifestation. Like you're repeating the same thing over and over to yourself, but you're not necessarily putting it out to God or anyone. You're putting it out to the universe. It's part of like manifestation. And like it's just part of it is imagination. Like part of like it's just imagination, like how to keep your imagination alive, how to see things that you can't see right now, but you want them to come into being. And meditation and prayer tools for seeing things you can't see right now, but helping them come into being is it's like imagination gone wild a little bit. So that's how I see it.
What are some of the things that you worry about at the moment?
Beyond the existential climate crisis, yeah, like I worry about this whole time thing. Like one big thing is like with the pandemic, everybody's talking about a new normal, but I'm not seeing a new normal. I seen a lot of backsliding and a lot of we're just going to go back to what's easy and comfortable. So that's a little worrying because everybody kept on talking about a new normal. We kept on talking how we're going to build back better, but right now it's just looking like too much of the same, and it's all the same, but like on a 20-year delay. Like we really, really do not have time to waste. So my big concern is we're kind of not tackling what we need to be tackling and just kind of falling back into old ways. And we're honestly just running out of time. I can't think about it enough because it'll give me too much stress and anxiety. But we really don't have enough time. And I hate how, like right now, out of the UN, there was this big bulletin come out from the official UN channel. It's like, these are the major takeaways from the UNGA last week. And it was just like, time is running out. No, time has already run out. I hate the whole concept of time is running out. We don't have time. It's already done. It's literally too late. People are talking about, like, science is talking about how we're going to hit we're going to start seeing 1.5 in 2024. And people want to keep talking about how time is running out. No, time ran out like 10, 20 years ago. We are on borrowed time. We don't even know. We're holding on to nothing right now. We built on very shaky foundation that is going to crack sooner rather than later. And we had enough time to try to do something with it, and we wasted it. And part of it is just, I know, unfortunately, it's been said to me straight up, the next 10, well, up until 2030 is going to suck. It's only going to be from hopefully the loss of lives and livelihoods and people seeing how bad it gets, and hopefully it impacting. I don't mean hopefully in a good way. I mean hopefully it impacting the 1%, the ones who could generally insulate from it. That hopefully the world will actually start to act and people will start putting money behind the actions and start implementing and start putting institutions in place. But it's just, yeah, it's really worrying how time has been not on our side and we wasted it.
Let us piggyback on that word that you used, hopefully. So, can you maybe explain that a bit more in terms of, do you still see hope, and where do you see it?
I'm a prisoner of hope. Hope is all I got. I have a younger sister. She's soon to be 5. She's part of my big source of hope. Like, I really don't plan on having kids or anything of these sorts. And she's the closest thing I have to like a next generation. And I would hope that she grows up in a world that kind of similar to one I grew up in, like playing with nature and not having to worry about like hurricanes, floodings, and storms every year. So part of my hope is that I have a little sister that I want to continue to play with and want to have a good world for her. But hope is the mantra of my generation, I guess, because we and this is why I say we have to leave space for spirituality, because if you look at the science and everything, hope isn't what we should be banking on, but it's all really got. And it's hopefully people with the big brains, people putting like seeing how big the problem is. Like the pandemic showed, like if we want to get together and solve a problem, we could solve a problem. Like the vaccine for the pandemic was developed in like 18 months. It was done. Like if we really, really want something done, we could get it done. And I hope that when it comes to climate crisis, one day, I don't want to say one day something really, really bad will happen, but that's probably what it will take. one day something really, really bad will happen, and hopefully the world will realize all these borders and wars and all these things that we fight about internally don't really matter if we're all on the same spaceship. So, yeah, hope.
Hey, we met each other during the United Nations General Assembly Climate Week days. The UN was also instrumental in facilitating, that we ultimately got the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And, it might not be perfect, but it's all we have at this moment to make this world, a bit better. What do you want the listeners of this podcast to know about the Sustainable Development Goals? That's my first question. And then second, have you heard about the Inner Development Goals? And if so, what are your thoughts about those Inner Development Goals?
Okay, I'll say when it comes to Sustainable Development Goals, they have the flaws, but they're pretty decent framework. So when it comes to people, I recommend everybody just look at these 17 and pick one. Like, I'm pretty sure you could find one you like and just pick one and advocate for it. It's very easy to advocate for it. It's generally a list of things that everybody wants and needs. So pick one that you like and make it your favorite, and that could be the one you advocate for. And that's how you get more familiar with all the SDGs. The Inner Development Goals, I'll say I hadn't heard about them until actually I went to the panel that you spoke on at the Climate Week, and I looked into it more, but I realized I kind of learned it in a different context. Like, I went to university, I did a postgrad in global leadership and regenerative leadership, and they have us do these like skills assessments and all these kind of personality quizzes, and it kind of comes up in that aspect. So I looked into it, I respected, like, I understand it to a certain extent, but I never heard of it, but I heard of it in like a different way, and I think that's kind of common. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for the listeners, it says the Inner Development Goals came about because this group of people that came up with those goals said, one of the reasons that we are falling behind on reaching towards going towards these SDGs is because we never really paid proper attention to the abilities and skills and qualities that you need as an individual and as a community. And if I listen to you, actually, you do a lot of hard work also on yourself, so if we want to change the systems, it starts with yourself. You need to know who you are and what you can do, and you need to know about your community. So for me, it makes a lot of sense in terms that you need to look at the I, we, it, and its perspectives, and then you can maybe contribute significantly to the changes that we need to see.
I just also like to throw in on that, like, part of it, like these cognitive tests and all these kind of things, it kind of points to the difference between like a developed and a developing country. Because at least in Trinidad and Tobago, the post-colonial context, it's what's referred to as like a learned helplessness. It's an unfortunate social phenomenon. It's just something that happened with people who are generally disempowered and marginalized. Like, you just generally feel the world isn't in your favor. So you're generally in a situation where you believe something or someone else has to come and save you. And it's part of the learned helplessness. And part of that learned helplessness is you never really learn the power in advocating for I. Like, you don't see the power of yourself as an individual. So I think that's a big difference in the whole developed and developing country context, at least in Trinidad and Tobago, that's also post-colonial, because we have an issue with like leadership and people and personnel. And part of that comes is just the history inherited. And that part of that will come with the Inner Development Goals, but it's just hard to develop yourself. Like, it's just like, it's a cultural issue, it's a social issue. It's just people think that's just how it is, and like, it's just a learned behavior that exists in our society. And yeah, so I respect the Inner Development Goals, and it's part of the problem. But trying to talk to people about how, like, socially, it's a very touchy subject. So you have to be very careful with how you come to people who've like just been dealing with a lot for a long time.
Mm-hmm. You talked about colonialism, post-colonialism. My organization celebrated its 75th anniversary. And during that time, so recently, and during that time, we also looked at, how did we do? And one of the big topics that came up is how did we do in relation to racial justice, and what should we do better? So I have a question for you about it. If you look at the NGO sector as a whole, and I totally understand it's difficult to generalize, but I'm asking you to do it anyway. But if you look at the NGO sector as a whole, in terms of racial justice, how do you think the sector did? And any advice for the sector?
I think the sector isn't immune to the same social problems. And I think the sector might be a certain vulnerable because NGO, the whole concept of like non-governmental organization, at least in Trinidad and Tobago, it's the term charity. And charity generally comes with, honestly, it's just white people trying to help BIPOC people. That's a lot of what charity is. So the NGO context, it is problematic because a lot of it is just perpetuating the same structures of just like people with power giving away like crumbs to the less fortunate. So I won't say it's like part of it is like trying to atone with racial justice, but it's not the same thing as empowering people. It's not the same thing as providing skills. It's not the same thing as like changing livelihoods. It's just like a little token to like just make yourself feel better for a minute and like quench a lower little feeling of guilt you may have. So I don't think the NGO sector is immune to the problems of racial justice. If anything, it may actually perpetuate it a little worse in certain circumstances because of this general nature of charity. And that's all I can really say about that.
And music is very important to me, so I always have a question relating to music as well. So if I ask you to name a song or a piece of music that best embodies who you are, which piece of music would that be and why?
That is you can't just make me pick one song. So that's why I was like, no. But for right now, in terms of just giving an answer, I would say there's a song, okay, locally the genre of music is called soca, and Destra, the Queen of Bacchanal, that's what she formally titles herself as a soca song that came out this year called Farewell. And like that's the song I would use right now in terms of a local context and understanding where things are right now. But you can't just make me pick one song. It's never going to be one song. At minimum, it's 100-song playlist. But okay, I will give you this one song for now.
Okay, I can give you 3. So
that just makes it worse. It's like it has to be a comprehensive Spotify playlist in a specific order designed to develop certain emotions. So for now, I would give you Destra, Queen of Bacchanal. The song is Farewell. That's the song I would give. But you can't.
And why? Why are you picking it?
Oh, because it's a good song. It like soca music is known for it's not intellectual in any capacity. You listen to soca music, dancing, having a good time in the street, just enjoying life. And the song is straight up is like no matter what happens in life, we just toast to the good times and we always find a reason to smile, kind of a vibe. So that's a good song. That's a sentiment I want to keep with me, hopefully for the rest of my life. So it's a song reminding you to appreciate the good times and find the reasons to smile, and just no matter what, it was good because we laughed and we smiled when it was happening.
Any message or invitation or question for the listeners?
I'll go with the classic. It always seems impossible until it's done. Like right now, we're kind of on a mission to fix the planet and resolve a lot of things we've done poorly in history. And time isn't on our side, and the odds aren't necessarily in our favor, but we still have to do it. Like it's the only option we have. Like we can't all run off to Mars. We can't just lay down and wait for the end. We have to fight. We have to go out with our boots on. So join the fight. Always seems impossible until it's done.
Although I don't know who the next guest on the podcast is. If I ask you, you may ask a question to my next guest. What would that question be?
what music are you listening to right now? And if you can make any recommendations, no pressure, anything like that. Like, what is your ultimate favorite song? Because that's too much. So any general music recommendations you have that you're willing to pass along, I'd appreciate. Thanks.
That's great. That's great. And do you play an instrument yourself, or?
I could technically play the djembe, the drum. I can play the simple chords on guitar. I never really mastered bar chords.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about it. I kind of dance to a certain extent, but I've gotten older. But I still have a couple more years of dance in me, and I'll never stop dancing. So yeah, my tools are my body for dance.
Mm-hmm.
I could drum for rhythm, and the guitar because guitar makes you cool.
What would be your advice to a faith-based organization that is trying to reach out to a younger community? How should they do that? And because what a lot of faith-based organizations are facing is that the younger generation is not going to church, and we discussed that earlier. So because what we experience is that when we are talking with the younger generation, they are really interested in the work that we do, because then we are not here to spread the word, but we are here to help people. So and to work with people. So what would be your advice? I mean, what starts ringing the bell with this younger generation?
I would say straight up, having church in your title does not help. That's not at least from my context, church is always associated with being annoyed, sitting down in a very hard chair, listening to somebody talk about things I don't really want to hear about right now. So the church in the title doesn't help. And I think a lot of it also comes with how church is generally set up. At least what I found is it's very much more of a lecture situation rather than like a learning interactive session. So I don't know how you make it more interactive. I know you have I know there's like Sunday like church groups and stuff that break off after mass and all that kind of stuff. But the whole mass and that whole hour to 2 hours of sitting down isn't going to help anyone and anything. Also, maybe possibly just one thing in general, my generation likes flex time. So if you could have a way you do the recording and you can listen to it on your own time, that might help to a certain extent. But church in your title doesn't help at all. Like we would do assemblies, we'll do summits, we'll do conferences, we'll do meetings, but church, that doesn't help the title because we're just too open. And our generation, like at least because of access to information, we're very flexible when it comes to religion. Even if you are religious, most people I know who consider themselves religious at least borrow from like 3 religions. So we can never pick one. So I think at least we want to see church and at least your organizations collaborating together more for, and also collaborating more across denominations, not just all Catholic, not all Christian, all that kind of stuff. So I think we want to see, if you want to see us join, we want to see maybe you guys show more effort at like just integrating more accessibility, more inclusion, more mixing around rather than just church.
Great. Thank you so much, Chandelle, for today. I really enjoyed it. And I would really encourage the listeners to check you out. I mean, in the podcast notes, there will be, the people will be able to find you. If they want to support you, they can. Thank you so much for today and good luck with everything you do.
Great. Yeah, thank you for having me. Again, if anybody could support me trying to get the COP27, it's much appreciated. But I'm working on it. Just a little anxious at this point. And thank you for your time. It was a great session. I like talking to you. Part of my thing is I'm a firm believer in the power of like dialogue and conversation. Too much of our history has been around like debate and argument. So I always like a good conversation. So thanks for that. And walk, talk, and listen.
Great. Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.